Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Maria McMahon, and today I want to talk about a very tragic story that people across the whole world are talking about right now. And I've also had quite a lot of people in my groups on my network, messaging me and talking about it. And because I work with people who have suffered with narcissistic abuse, whenever a big domestic violence case comes up, like this one obviously is, I can't help but look for signs of narcissistic abuse, because there's still so little awareness about what really goes on with this form of abuse. And those of us who do know about it know that narcissists can fool everyone. So obviously the question I've been going over in my head over the last week or so is, could Brian Laundrie be a narcissist? Now, in case you don't know the case, Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, they're engaged. They were on a van trip across the United States, and she was doing a blog that was going very, very well. And she went missing, and tragically, we now know that she's dead. Just absolutely heartbreaking. So in case you don't know the case, you can just Google it or YouTube it and you'll find out tons of what went on. So, millions and millions of people have watched the video now, where the police body cam video where she and her fiance were stopped on August the 12th. And it was after a 911 call. And the video was released because of her subsequent disappearance. And obviously now, as I've said, tragically, we know that this beautiful young woman was murdered. And, to say my heart goes out to her family and her friends, and it's just heartbreaking. And I know that the hearts of millions of people around the world are feeling the same, absolutely heartbroken that this awful tragedy has happened. And it's quite hard to do this, actually, because I'm used to talking about narcissistic abuse and what if and this, that, and the other, and this is what they do and this is what to expect. But I've still found it quite hard to do this because, a beautiful 22-year-old woman is now dead, and it could possibly be that the person who is responsible is her fiance and he's a narcissist. So what I do want to say is that what I'm talking about here is I'm assessing the behavior, what I've seen on that video, through the lens of the possibility that, that he is a narcissist, or if he were a narcissist, this could be a possible explanation, or this could be what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm not trying to diagnose him. And this is not, like a full forensic analysis by any means. I'm just looking at some things that jumped out at me. So basically, we know that he turned after the trip, and after they were, a week or so, 2 weeks after they were stopped by the police, he returned home after the hiking trip in Gabby's van and without her. And then very quickly, he went missing himself. And as of the moment, there's a massive police hunt still going on for him. And it's not actually for the crime of murder. They're talking about credit card fraud. That's where we're at the moment. And I'm not going to go into speculation about any of that, because there's obviously a ton of that going on already. But I do want to address some of the points that came up for me having watched the video. And also, obviously, I've watched a lot of other videos that other people on YouTube are doing and what they're saying, and just wanted to talk a little bit about that. But I will be clear in saying that what I'm saying, it's me speculating, it's some possible interpretations. It's definitely not a video of the an analysis of the whole video. So one of the things that came up on one of the commentaries videos that I watched was that one person mentioned that Brian Laundrie looks and acts confident. And he goes on to say that's because, he knows he didn't do anything wrong and he probably loves her. Now, the thing is that A narcissist has no problem acting confidently and looking innocent, no matter what they might have done. And they know it's not their fault because they don't recognize their own guilt in anything. It's always the other person's fault. So no matter what's happened, they will not take any blame for it. And this is why they're so dangerous, because they can act so normally, no matter what might have gone on before. They don't feel that they have anything to hide or be sorry for. So it's kind of quite easy for them to give off this innocent and kind of normal body language, to kind of give off that easy sort of vibe. It's also easy for them to act like they're the victims, because they can very easily make themselves seem like victims in their own minds, because they can't do anything wrong as far as they're concerned. So anytime they're put in front of any kind of a spotlight, they immediately feel that, well, it's not their fault, they haven't done anything. And even there's a certain nervousness that Brian Laundrie displays at times, especially early on in the video, and he comes across almost as endearing. Now, another comment that I heard from another poster was that he's actually not disparaging her or saying anything bad about her. And if he's a narcissist, then of course he's not. And in this particular case, generally they're too clever anyway to do that. But he slipped in very early on that she's crazy, she gets worked up. And he's, I would say, very possibly, if not probably, convinced her that she has OCD. And maybe that's why she said it. Because she did say in this particular video, she actually says, sometimes I have OCD. Now, if you've been diagnosed with OCD, or it's a real feature in your life, you have it all the time. It's not something that it's not a sometimes thing. And also in an interview I watched with her father, he says, this is news to him. She does not have OCD. So OCD is also something that, we quite often, especially, in a slangy way today, we tend to describe it could be ourselves or it could be another person. We could say, oh, you're OCD. If you're fussy about keeping things tidy, I have a sister who's always saying she has OCD, but she doesn't. She just is very fussy and tidy, in particular about certain things. So it's entirely possible that because she's tidy and she likes to have everything in its place, and especially in this comparatively small van they were traveling and living in together, he may have planted that seed that she's got OCD. Although my thinking is that it's very likely that he's probably done this many times in the past and said she has OCD, and that it's kind of gone into overdrive on this trip. Okay, so it's a possibility. So the thing about this is that it's very, very typical about what narcissists do. So they're very, very good, they're expert at very subtly undermining their partners, but it's always done in a way that makes the partner seem at fault, and the partner accepts it because over time they become so brainwashed in so many other ways by the narcissist. So Laundrie has implied that, she's the difficult one. And in this video, you see he's playing the sort of kind, compliant, nice guy. By not disparaging her or saying anything bad about her, he's making himself look like the good guy. Very, very typical play that you will see in these type of abusive relationships. Now, another red flag that jumps out at me is that at no point do we see any empathy from Laurie about how his fiancée is feeling. And you'll know if you've seen the video that she's crying and she's visibly very, very upset, and that goes on for some time. He's spending all his time trying to be nice to the police and making himself look good, and he's joking and laughing a lot. There doesn't seem to be any genuine concern for, oh, how's she doing? Yeah, things got out of hand. I hope she's okay. There's none of that. Now, it might seem normal for any couple if, they've just had a big domestic dispute and tempers have become flared and anxiety and stress levels are high. But he seems just too amicable and pleasant as time goes on. And this whole incident took quite a while. This wasn't just a 15-minute, done and dusted job. The whole episode on camera that we see took almost an hour and a half. So it's quite a long time. Now, there's also a point where the police, and they are acting in accordance with the letter of the law. That's pretty clear from what they say on the video. They say that they may have to charge Gabby with domestic violence because Laundrie does have visible cuts on his head. And at this point, he just kind of chuckles, he kind of laughs. And that kind of strikes me as very odd. Why would someone laugh? It's not a laughing matter. You know, some would say, oh, it's a nervous laugh. But if he's a narcissist, that could be just, that's a little laugh of relief. He's succeeded in making her look like the crazy one and getting the blame put on her. And this behavior is very, very transparent to anyone watching who understands how coercive abuse and covert abuse plays out. And anyone watching Gabby's body language, you can see that she's traumatized and she's emotionally wrecked. And this is very often how victims of narcissistic abuse often behave when they've been dealing with this covert abuse and they reach this kind of breaking point, this, this emotional overload. And she's unable to pull herself together for quite a while because of that stress overload. It's absolutely also, and this is another red flag, is it's heartbreaking to see Gabby blaming herself for everything. She doesn't blame Brian at any point. She keeps apologizing and saying, I'm sorry for being mean. You know, it's my fault, it's my OCD. She's blaming herself for everything and she believes that it's all her fault. But that will be because over time, as I mentioned, he'll have convinced her that everything is her fault. And the tragedy of this is, and it is with so many victims, is that they have no idea that this is even happening. You know, they think it's my fault, it's me. And again, this is all to do with the brainwashing and the gaslighting that narcissists put their victims through. But of course, to the uninitiated, to people untrained in understanding this kind of abuse, it's very easy to think at first glance that she's neurotic, she's the one with mental health issues, she's the problem. But the truth is very often completely the other way around. Now, another comment I saw was that they were both being honest, and I think for the most part, they are being honest, even though there are discrepancies in the stories that can be unpicked and unpacked. But the problem is that when you don't understand the psychological manipulation and effects of narcissistic abuse, you're making assumptions on what normal people will do in these situations. And reading body language and interpreting talk and so on cannot possibly tell the hidden story that could be going on. And even experts in their fields can be fooled unless they know what to look for. And I've seen many such videos that lead me to think that. Now, this is in no way to disrespect any of the people who are out there involved in trying to analyze and figure out what's happened. I'm not here to diss anyone. I know that everyone is horrified by this case, and they're all trying to understand it and shed light on it, in their own way and for their own followers. But so far, I've only come across one vlogger who actually sees the signs that he could be, as I obviously do, that he could be a narcissist and that this is a very, very toxic relationship. Now, let's look at another point that jumped out at me. Brian's story is about, at one point about how he tried to distance himself from Gabby because she gets worked up sometimes. It's just somewhere I see a big red flag here, because he says that he pushes her away and won't let her back in the van because he wants to give her a chance to calm down. Now, he talks a good talk in this particular part. His cover story sounds feasible, but if he's a narcissist, he'll have done that to punish her and instill fear in her that he's maybe going to leave her there and drive off without her. Now, it's also about showing her that he's in control. It's another sign of narcissistic manipulation and intimidation. We know that Gabby was trying to get back in the van and he was trying to prevent her. So her stress and anxiety levels would have been really high at this point. So he wasn't trying to get her to take a breath and calm down. That's just the cover story he's using when he talks to the police. And as I say, it sounds feasible. But to me, that didn't sound feasible. Now, backtrack again, the argument started in the morning because she told the police she had a ton of work to do on her website and he wanted to get going. Now, this obviously pissed him off because, as you know, if you're watching my channel, then you'll know something about narcissists. They have to be the center of the universe and you're not allowed to have any desires of your own. Now, Brian Laundrie, he's also on film where he's referring to her little website. And she mentions that he doesn't believe in it and that he's kind of ruined everything. So he's not being this great supportive fiance. He's actually been demeaning her efforts and putting her down. And he's managing to do this even on camera in this subtle way. Now, if she had said to him, let's say after they got going and he was pissed off because she wanted to stay and work on her website, he had his coffee, it was time to go, she had to go. And if she'd said something to him like, oh, why do you have to ruin everything? For example, that would be like a red rag to a narcissistic bull, because narcissists do not take any kind of criticism well. And if she'd said that, or something along those lines, this would have been construed as an insult to him. So I can imagine him in the van with her, because this had gone on all day. She said they'd been arguing all day or all morning. I can imagine him just wearing her down, going on and on and on and on at her, to the point that it erupted into a physical fight on the side of the road, which then continued when they got back in the car. Now, there was another red flag. Not everyone might see it as a red flag, but I did. So she said that she quit her job to travel across the country. And questions I would ask, or what would want to know the answers to, is, did he persuade her to do that? I wonder, was it her idea? Now, we know that she wanted to start this travel blog, and she did. So maybe that absolutely was her idea. And maybe he did encourage her, but did he want to get her away on a long trip somewhere as a means of isolating her and getting her further under his control? This would be a very typical narcissistic trait. Or it could be that she was so passionate about the idea that she made it happen. Obviously she did, and she was doing well with it. And maybe he resented it, but he went along with it. You know, and so this and many other questions would need to be answered in order to get, obviously, a much fuller picture. You know, what we're talking here is just snippets, but to get a bigger picture of what was going on in the relationship. And obviously, as this investigation goes on, more and more information will come to light. Now, I've also seen lots of posts with people saying, if she was in trouble or afraid of him, why didn't she tell the police? And these make me want to just gnaw my knuckles off, because such comments make sense to normal people in normal relationships, but it shows that they don't understand the complexity of abusive relationships. Now, I could say with great confidence that Gabby, God rest her beautiful soul, I could say without a doubt she was trauma bonded to Brian. And she would be like any typical victim of covert abuse. She'd refuse to press charges, and she would defend him if she had to, because in her heart, she loves him and she believes she's the one who's the problem, not him, because he has her conditioned to think that everything is her fault. And I've already mentioned how that happens. Now, I have some theories about motivation and what could cause Brian Laundrie to snap. And again, I say this with a caveat that we don't know where he is. We don't know what happened or whether he'll be found and whether he'll be found guilty, whatever. As of posting this video, he's currently being sought as a person of interest by the police, and there is a warrant out for his arrest, citing credit card fraud. Now, the FBI have not said whether the credit card he used belonged to Gabby. He's not officially been declared a prime suspect. So we've all got opinions about that, but I'm going to leave that there for now. What I'm going to be doing is just putting forward a theory about what could cause a narcissist to snap to the point that they could commit murder. Now, in a nutshell, there are two things particularly that jumped out at me. One is that it could be extreme jealousy over this new blog that's taking so much of her attention and it's taking away from him. That would be a huge red flag, because the narcissist craves attention and they love to be in the spotlight. And again, backtracking just to clarify, the argument had started in the morning because Gabby had a ton of work to do on her website and he wanted to get going after coffee. So the argument started, and by the time the police stopped them, she was visibly distressed, crying, and we can only speculate how much verbal abuse he might have subjected her to during the time they were driving, because she got to the point that she lashed out at him, allegedly with her phone, and he did have cuts, visible cuts above his eyes. Now, as you know, narcissists have to be the center of the universe, and you're not allowed to have any desires of your own, and her ton of work to do before they got back on the road would massively clash with his narcissistic ego. So, as one of her key objectives on the trip was to blog about her van life, their van life on their travels across the US, this wasn't going to be a temporary thing that would just go away. So there would have been no respite for Laundrie. That constant threat to his ego would be ever present, and the resentment would continue to build. So her blog, which I believe was doing very well, would have been a constant distance in her time. And that would mean taking time and attention away from him. Remember, narcissists are not like normal people. A normal partner would want to see his partner being successful and really succeeding with this travel blog, but a narcissist wouldn't, okay? Now, another thing that jumped out at me was I noticed on the police video during the video, a couple of times Brian expresses sorrow about this all being so public. Now, I believe this could play a major role. If he's a narcissist, this would be a massive narcissistic injury to have been stopped, questioned, and in his mind, humiliated by the police, even though the police were calm and pleasant to both parties, throughout the whole episode. But it comes back to narcissists hate to be questioned or cornered or, found, put in the spotlight in a negative way. They want to preserve the fake persona at all times. So Brian was very compliant and pleasant, and he tried to get pally with the police, something he actually manages to pull off. He even ends up like fist bumping one of them at the end, towards the end. So you have to remember that narcissists are highly manipulative people, and they're excellent at fooling other people. So, in that whole video, you can see the progression, how he kind of gets their trust. And it's not to say that they are not kind to her. They do treat Gabby, I think, gently, although there are issues that I'm not going to go into here. But at the end of it, he's come off as the nice guy. Now, if he is a narcissist, in spite of the fact that, he didn't get charged and the police took him to spend the night in a hotel, whatever, this kind of exposure would have him seething inside, because deep down he would have been feeling shame at being put under the spotlight in such a public way. And narcissists absolutely hate to be seen in any kind of negative light by the public. Now, adding to this, in his mind, it would of course all be her fault, and he'd be raging that she would put him in such a position. In his mind, there would be no issue of accountability for his role in both of them reaching this point, because narcissists don't take responsibility for anything they do, and it is never, ever their fault, as I've mentioned. So it would only be a matter of time before, and again, this is hypothetical, before his narcissistic rage exploded and made him capable of killing her. But if he has, are we dealing with a sociopath? Because what we do know is that most narcissists do not commit murder, but many narcissists at the sociopathic end of the scale do. And I can also see how, this case is going to be compared with Chris Watts. And again, I stress that I'm speculating here because Laundrie is missing. He's not been named a prime suspect. But if he is, there will be comparisons to Watts, who murdered his pregnant wife and 2 young daughters in 2018 in a case that horrified the world. He's now serving life sentence without parole. But whether he's a narcissist, a psychopath, a sociopath, you can't actually seem to find a definitive answer out there. The jury is still very much out, in terms of speculation across the internet, because I have researched it, on where he fits in terms of personality disorders. And if you don't know that case, just go to Google and Google Chris Watts. It will come up. So I can kind of see this case is going to go the same way. And I just hope that, it doesn't in a way. But coming back to the case at hand, before I digress too much. So we know from the 911 call, that's obviously all over YouTube, that a witness saw the couple verbally and physically fighting, and that he slapped her and he hit her. So we know that he has the propensity for physical violence. We also know that he had cuts from the altercation, which he said was caused by Gabby when she hit him with a phone. But when police asked her why she'd hit him, she said she was trying to get him to stop telling her to calm down. And she talks about how she's, usually a calm person. Now, this is another red flag, because she probably is a calm, lovely person, but a narcissist will try the patience of even the most mellow person on the planet. And she was probably at her wit's end with him, and she probably just lashed out in frustration. Now, I'm not saying that it was right to do that, or that it's ever right to lash out with anyone, but the frustration had probably been building up for quite some time. And again, her lashing out at him, another blow to his narcissistic ego. So if you take all of these things into consideration, it's not that difficult to imagine the seething anger and rage brewing within, and another explosive fight happening later on the trip. If you add in a remote hiking location where they probably could go days without seeing another soul, the opportunity to carry out such a crime would present itself quite readily. Now, yet another red flag, there are also a lot of concerns emerging now about Laundrie's family behavior. Once he returned, then disappeared very quickly, once it was discovered that she was missing. And bear in mind, he returned home to his family's house with her van, refused to talk to the police, so all the arrows are pointing in his direction. But now there's also speculation that his family aided in his escape. This obviously would indicate to me that there are dysfunctional family dynamics. And this is also a very common thing that we find with people who kill. They usually have, not always, but a large number of times, they have very dysfunctional, toxic families. So we don't know enough about his family yet, but it's just another thing that gave me pause. Now, however you look at it, it's an absolutely tragic story that this beautiful young woman's life has ended in such a brutal way. And as I said, this is just a brief video about, some initial thoughts about this video. there are ways, there are layers and layers to unpack in this continually unfolding story. And I will be following it, and I may do some more videos to talk about it, you know, as it goes on. But for now, I just hope that he's found, and that Gabby's family can get the answers that they so desperately need. And in the meantime, I join the millions of others saying RIP Gabby, you know, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.